Hello, everyone. For some reason, you have decided to hang out with me yet again for another session. Thank you so much for coming. Day 3, here we are. Let me know how y'all are doing in the chat because wow, what a time we have had this week. What a time. Can we talk about it for a second? Quick review of the week we've had thus far, though. So, day 1, we what did we do? What is time? Okay, day 1, we set up our Premiere Pro project. I showed you a couple of the ins and outs of like my organization strategy when importing footage. I think I showed y'all how to attach proxies as well. What else did I do? Oh my gosh, so much stuff. Let's say that's what we did in day 1. Day 2, I ended up showing you how you could then take your long form video, pull all of your smaller content, your bite-sized content down into different timelines. I know we covered pancaking timelines, and then we also like finalized, what was it, 3, 4 shorts, something like that. We finalized a couple of shorts as well. Today, what I want to do is I want to take us through the wonderful world of color in Premiere Pro, because Premiere Pro can actually do quite a bit with color, and I think it can do so much that it does get a little scary sometimes, especially from a content creator perspective. So today is all about color today. I'm going to show you some interesting things Premiere Pro can do. And I'm also going to start to talk to y'all a little bit about the difference between certain terms we hear, whether you're in the industry professionally, quote unquote, or not, around color, and kind of give you just like an epic sort of crash course on all things color that I think are relevant. But before we get into that, hello in the chat. I am in the chat this time today. Again, shout out to our moderators for being amazing. Sean's back. Good old Sean, as per usual. How you doing? Else do we have? Anika's here. Nice. Gareth, hello. Nice to see you. A ton of folks. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. So let's get into this. Very quickly, I want to talk about the difference between color correction and color grading. I feel like you kind of hear those terms interchangeably sometimes, but they actually technically mean two different things. The first thing, color correction, as it sounds, correcting the color. So maybe when you were filming, you were a little bit off. It doesn't quite look natural to the eye. Maybe you accidentally had the wrong white balance, or maybe your auto white balance was not working the way it should that day. All of that kind of stuff. That is when you're just correcting the color to look as natural to the human eye as possible. Color grading, that is when we start to add a stylized look on top of the footage. So you'll probably sometimes hear in the cinematic world, the teals and greens is the usual style for a lot of things, or, the Matrix always kind of had that sort of green tint over it to give that sort of like techie feel. That becomes color grading, and that's the stylized look after you color correct. And they're doing all of the loud things outside. So if we get some of that noise, sorry in advance, but sounds like they're leaf blowing out there, and that's going to take a while. Now, before we color correct and color grade a few things in our long form video, remember, officially I have now finished this video. Yesterday, I think I was almost done with it when we were pulling things from it. But officially last night, I ended up finishing this video, exporting it, and making it available to my patrons. If you do end up wanting to see this vlog, you'll probably be able to see it later today. If not tomorrow, I'll have it go live on the channel. Ooh, I see a question. How can we fix overexposed videos in Premiere? What's the best way to do it? Yes, we will get into that. Great question, Anika. All right. So before we get into it, though, I want to talk really briefly about how Premiere interprets color, because it interprets it in a few ways. And I think these are good to know, even if they do kind of like freak you out and scare you. Bear with me. I promise the inside baseball I'm about to share is worth it. The first way, though, is what I think I showed y'all on the first day: project settings, file, and then general. And when we go here, color management, right here, you'll notice mine is set to 300, 81% HLG, 62% PQ. We're not going to get to inside baseball and what those things mean, but just know that if you're someone who's starting to experiment shooting more log footage, S-Log, V-Log, C-Log, all the brands put a letter in front of the word log, but basically it just means super flat. So that way you can have a lot of dynamic range to play around and design. Then you want to have your HDR graphics white as high as possible, have more HLG, high logarithmic gamma, that's what that means, versus PQ. So as you can see, mine is set to 300. I'm going to change it right now to 100 so you can see what happens to just the frame we're looking at. You can see it just like blew out crazily. And that's only because it is how Premiere is choosing to interpret the ratio of HLG to PQ in the color of my footage. All right, so we're going to go switch that back now. So like I said before, if you're filming in these sort of high dynamic range cameras, even your phone, I know iPhones do that now too, and you'll notice that when you bring things into Premiere, it looked great on your camera, but you bring it in and it looks blown out and crazy. It's probably because you need to update the ratio. And I'm going to ask the producer real quick, is that too loud outside or are we good? Okay, great. So loud to me. All right. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about is the color profiles, or the color, what is the proper term? I always forget the proper term they use. Workspaces, the working color space of Premiere Pro. So let me remind y'all how I got there. I went to sequence settings here at the top. And then we're looking at this right here, the working color space. Rec 709 is usually, for all of us content creators on the internet, that is where you want your working color space to be, because that is basically what is just like widely accepted across most of the internet. There are other workspaces now available. This is when you start to get inside baseball again, Rec 2100 HLG and Rec 2100 PQ. That's when you're starting to do things like sending things to a colorist and crazy stuff that I personally don't have the budget for. I don't know what kind of life y'all live, but I don't have the budget for that. So we stay in Rec 709 and we work within Premiere Pro to get our color the way we want. So those are two things I wanted to make sure y'all know about, just in case. Now, the final thing I want to bring to your attention as well for our Mac users out here, when you get to the final phase where you are ready to start messing around with color, come into your settings and make sure all of this junk is turned off. Turn off the night shift, turn off True Tone, because it's going to mess with how you're actually seeing color portrayed on your monitor. So make sure all of that stuff is turned off. Okay. Now, all of that said, let's also move into our color workspace. So again, Premiere has different workspaces that we can work into. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the color workspace, just so when y'all do start to play around with this, you can be in this workspace and we can all see the same thing. So I'm going to double click on that and it moves us into the color workspace, which is relatively similar to what we had before, more or less. And I want to talk to y'all about the Lumetri scopes. So you'll see my Lumetri scopes are set up this way. I have the, combo Lumetri scopes, and then I have the red, green, blue RGB parade, as it's called. And then I also have a color wheel available as well. If you ever want to change any of these things, right click and you can add or remove anything. So I don't usually have a histogram on, but I can add it if I want. So on and so forth. I like to have these three. That's just me. And quick question to y'all in the chat. Have any of y'all ever just kind of messed around with how color is represented in the frame, and y'all, just know what these mean, any of y'all kind of like familiar with it? If I don't want to like tell y'all things you already might know. We can just keep it moving along. True Tone is the bane of my life as well. I will be looking at something, think it looks so great, and then it's 8 o'clock at night and I realize it's on and I need to turn it off and now everything looks green and it's a mess. It's just crazy. So yeah, I'm going to assume that maybe y'all haven't experimented with Lumetri color because I forgot the lives are on a bit of a delay. So it's going to take a second. All right. So the Lumetri scopes, what they represent is color the data of color represented in the frame, whatever frame you're currently looking at. So right now we've got, let's move it to a frame that maybe makes a little more sense. Ooh, that one's like undershot. Yeah, let's do me right here. Zoom in a little bit. Perf. Okay. So here I am sitting in front of some greenery, right? And then here is how I am represented in the frame through color in Lumetri scopes. So if I play for a second, you'll see all the color data starts to move around. So you see, like we see when my coffee cup comes into frame and exists and what those color values are. So let's make this full screen. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to interpret this when you're starting to get into color correction and color grading. So 100 means white. That's the basic acknowledgement. 100 means white. If you bump it up and you just see everything's hitting across this line up top, anything above that, it's white. It's blown out, it's gone. You've basically lost the data in that pixel. 0, contrastly, means black. Anything that hits there and is just really sitting on that line, and I'll show you in a second, but anything that hits there and is sitting on that line is essentially black, dead pixel, sure, if you want to call it that. And everything in between is everything in between. And that's more or less how to interpret color when you're looking at the Lumetri scopes. So it's less about using your eye and more about using the data that is available to you in frame. So I'm going to click on me on this clip. And when I like to color correct, the way I like to color correct, everyone does it a little differently. But if I'm going to color correct by hand, I usually focus on my exposure. And if you work in Lightroom, probably Photoshop as well, any of those, this will look relatively familiar to you. I usually like to focus on exposure, contrast, and then whites and blacks. And then from there, I start to finesse a little bit more. So let's go ahead and remember, we're going to focus on me in this frame. We're not going to focus on the fact that the white cup is very close to 100. Like, doesn't matter. The point of the shot is me talking to the camera. It's about me. So let's now bump up our exposure a little bit, right? And have it to where, all right, I'm more or less hitting like 95. So we're still not losing any data on me. I'm represented here in the middle of the frame because I'm here in the middle of this frame, right? Now let's go to our blacks and let's have our blacks actually kiss 0, which right about there, they are. And then we're going to have our whites come up just a little bit. And from there, something else I like to do is because I shoot HLG footage, I always kind of bump up my saturation just a little bit. So we're going to go like 115, 120. Super minor, but you do see how doing that saturation expanded everything a little bit more. So now I want to bring things in. Okay, go. And then something else I want to do is I want to play around with the contrast. Boom. So here's where we started. Okay, here's where we started. And now here's where we are. Super minor, but I would say this is more or less color corrected, right? So that way you, as the viewer, more or less can see what's in frame, see the point of the frame, and be balanced. Now, another thing we could do, and generally through a whole project, I would go through and start to do something like this. Now, something else I want to bring to your attention within Premiere Pro, we're going to reset everything, is right up here at the top, this button called Auto. This is called Auto Color. It's a feature that was introduced, I want to say sometime last year to Premiere Pro. And it's actually cool. I'm going to sound super jargony, but using the power of Adobe Sensei, it takes a best guess of starting to color correct your footage for you. So I'm actually curious to see what it does with this shot. We're just going to hit the auto button and just see what it does. Okay, so we see it made some minor adjustments. All right, I'm going to turn it off so you can see where we started. That's where we started. Oop, there we go. And that's where we landed. So again, it kind of made similar adjustments that I made by hand, but it did it in, 10 seconds, where I had to kind of sit here and finesse and talk through it with y'all. So this is a really great feature that can save you a lot of time. I also want to make sure to point out to y'all the intensity scale here. So if you're someone who's very new to color correction and color grading, and you just want to see what an AI would do with it, you can mess with the intensity scale and see how things do or don't change. So if we have the intensity at 100, here's where we're at, turn it off. That's where we started. That's where it landed. I mean, I don't hate that either. Now that I'm looking at it, I don't hate that. But we're going to put it back to 50. So let's take another clip and do this one more time, just so y'all can kind of see what auto color is capable of. And auto color, I think, is a really great place to start when you're starting to color correct your footage. And again, just to like save you time and move you along through the process. So here's another section of the vlog where, this is what I could do for the space that I was shooting in. I'm shooting, the camera's down, looking up at me, so I look a little bit larger than life, which is a bit unnecessary. I'm also in sort of this kind of interesting, dark, crowded space. I'm a deep-skinned person, so, I don't really have a natural light hitting me at all, which is kind of messing things up a bit. So I went ahead and just kind of underexposed this while filming, knowing that because of the way I film, I'd have a little bit more room to mess around. But you can see where we're clipping here, where we've lost data at the very top, where the sun is actually hitting the wall in the back. But let's see what auto color does with this. Let's just see what it does, Gonna hit the button. Dude, I mean, look at that you can actually see who I am now, that's crazy. And so from here, I would maybe mess around and tweak things a little bit more, but like auto color got me like 70 to 82% of the way, especially with a shot like this, where I would really probably be sitting here trying to find that right ratio to work through to get the color I want for this shot before ever adding my color grading on top of it. So really nice stuff. I think I want to say this one, yeah, I'm a bit blown out here because it's a pretty sunny day. So let's see what auto color does with this as well. This one's harder. It helped. Let's see, we turn it off. Yes, it helped quite a bit. It flattened the background as well and did a lot. So again, auto color, really, really solid tool to have in your arsenal to move that much faster through your color correction and color grading. Because can we talk about that? Jeez, that's crazy. All right. Can you all tell I didn't use auto color when I was actually color correcting, color grading this? I only used it on a couple shots. I didn't use it for everything. Okay, one final spot I want to see. Now that we're in this, I'm like, ooh, what's another place we could use auto color and see what it does? Let's see. There was one other thing, and I want to say it was when we were at the Archaeological Museum that I wanted to see what it could do with that. Here, this shot. All right. Apparently, this is a ceremony that's done every now and then in front of the Archaeological Museum in Mexico City. If you ever go, check it out. And it's these guys like climbing and doing this crazy epic thing way up top of this pole. Like this pole is like easily 100 feet off the ground. It's insane. Anyway, again, I shot kind of flat. You can see what our Lumetri scopes are doing here. Like we're really not getting that much variety of information because it's a very blue sky. But let's see what auto color does with this, because now I'm just curious, like let's hit auto. And whoa, why did it do that? Like move the clip. That was weird. Uh-oh, did I break it? Did I break it? Let's see. And move. There we go. And auto. Oh, it's freaking it out. I know why, because it's slow-mo. Let's do that. Ta-da. Giving Premiere a second to catch up with me. And it wants to save. This is me flying too close to the sun on a live. making Premiere do so much stuff. But all right, let's see. Let's see if it did it now. There we go. It did it. It caught up with me. All right, so taking it away, that's where we were. Bringing it back on really brought out the deep blues of the sky, which I'm here for. Oh, I see a question. Hold on. What happens if you use full HD sequence and export in 4K? What will happen to my video? Assuming I understand what you're talking about. So what usually will happen, Muhammad, with that sort of thing is one, why do you have your sequence in HD instead of 4K if what you're working on is in 4K? That sounds like you should be utilizing proxies a little bit more. If you're trying to like not bog your system down with 4K footage. So maybe start incorporating proxies, I would say. But if you do a full HD sequence and you export in 4K and the original footage in that sequence is in 4K, I think it'll be okay. And it should more or less be all right. But that's kind of like getting into some like interesting, weird fandangoing that I would say is almost like redundant or creating space for error that doesn't need to be there. Just export in 4K or just work in a 4K timeline. All right, back to color. All right, so we played around with auto color to see what it could do. That was fun. Now I know what I want to show y'all. This is a trick that I like to show people when color correcting and starting to color grade people of deeper skin tones. But I also think this trick works really well, honestly, on anyone. And I like to use this a lot. I actually taught this at Adobe Max last year as well, because it's just like my favorite trick to do. I learned this from a cinematographer, Sean Craig. He's based out of Atlanta. And it's like, I just love doing it. So we're going to auto me again, just to save time. But we're going to auto me, and then we're going to try to see how much we can like bring out the natural like vibrancy and deepness of my skin. And we're going to have some fun doing that. So generally speaking, when you're color correcting, you'll probably stay up here, you know, in this area of the Lumetri color scopes, of the Lumetri color tab. But if we come down to curves, okay, we come down to curves, I want to show you, don't get scared, but I want to show you two different curves that I love to use. And I'm going to turn my proxies back on. I just realized I had them off. All right. So two different things I love to use. We're going to focus on the first one, hue versus saturation. So we're going to focus on that one. And then we're going to focus on the second one being hue versus luma right here. Those are the only two we're going to touch. So we have me here. And then if I remember correctly, we did auto color here at the top. Looks pretty good. I'm going to bump the saturation up just a little bit more. And I'm going to bump up exposure just a little bit more. Looking at my Lumetri scopes, it makes like just some slight tweaks to what auto color did on this one. Because every shot, it's going to look at every shot and calculate it differently, even if it is more or less of the same thing. So for this one, I feel like it did a little bit of things different that I'm like, I don't like that. All right. Anyway, though, we're going to go down to our curves, and we're going to take this eyedropper here in hue versus saturation, and we're going to grab it, and we're going to kind of pick more or less in the center of my face. Cool. And you'll see now that color, that color is now represented in this line grid over here. And so that's more or less where my forehead sits in the color space, if you will. I'm now just gonna like bump me up a little bit. And I'm not sure if y'all will be able to see it as well on the live as I do, because the screen is quite small, but I am literally just like adding more saturation to my skin. Let's see if I take it away. Will you see it? Let's see if I scoop it down more and add it. Will you see it? Nice. So I like doing this, especially if I'm doing like a sit down well-lit vlog, you know, talk to camera, maybe it's a tutorial video or things like that, I will do this to bring out the vibrancy of my skin just a little bit more. And then also the other thing I like to do is the hue versus luma. So say I am in a space where I'm using lights like these artificial lights. I find that when I'm outside, I tend to be the most well lit, ironically. I don't know. I feel like the sun just looks really good on my skin. But if I'm inside and I'm using lights like these, I will notice, and you'll probably see this on me right now, pretty harsh like cuts of light, because unless you have a crazy epic softbox, it's just hard to get a super nice even light across your face with like very gradual, what we call fall off and whatnot. So another thing you can do is you can come down here to the hue versus luma, right? And do the same thing, but try to pick the area of the face that is potentially brighter. And you'll notice it scooted things down just a little bit. And what this will do is it'll basically, yeah, there you see it. It detracts the luma, the light, like the brightness, like the exposure, at that area and in that color spectrum, and darkens it. So now with this one, you see now I look way more even across my entire face. So turned it off, that's what it was before. On, that's what it is now. You see how even I look now across the entirety of my face. And this is a trick that, again, I think can work for all skin tones, but I love doing this particularly on my deeper skin tone. I see some questions popping up in the chat, and I want to make sure I acknowledge them. Anika is asking, how do you fix exposure on part of the footage? Say, create a mask? Yes, you are correct. So let's say, how do we want to do this? Ooh, okay. Let's say we want to, for whatever reason, actually, let me find like a good shot that we can like do this with. I wonder if the last shot maybe? Yeah. All right. So let's say we have this shot here, right? And it looks pretty good. Don't hate it. But it's kind of bothering me that we've lost so much data in our sky right here. So we're going to try to create a mask and see if we can fix that. We're going to go into effects controls, and here's where it starts to get a little tricky, because then it's about like you're doing masks, but you're also potentially needing to layer the same shot on top of each other to make sure you're like getting exactly what you want. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to zoom in a little bit so we can see. We're going to highlight this clip. We're going to hit shift. And while we're holding shift, we're just going to drag up. Oh, wrong button. Or is it this one? I always forget the shortcut. It's that one. It's option. If you click on a clip and hold option and move it up or down, it just duplicates that clip on or above on top of each other. So that's another quick shortcut for you to know. So with this one, we're going to have this one be our sky layer. Okay. And there's like a lot of different ways you can go about this, but the way I usually do it, like the rough and ready way, is I go over here to my effects and I type in crop and I throw it on there. All right. So now we're going to crop this one. I'm going to turn this one on so you can see, or turn this layer off so we don't see our bottom clip. And we're going to work with our top clip here. And I just more or less want like this side, if you will, of the frame, right? So I'm going to go from the right. There we go. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to definitely hit this guy hardcore, which is the edge feather. So we're going to like feather the, not curse on the live, the lot of it. We're going to feather it into the oblivion, and then we're going to scoot this over just a little bit more, which I think is pretty good. And now for this top layer, now I'm going to mess with the color. But before I do that, let's do the bottom layer first so we really see the difference. So I've turned off this layer just by hitting the eye. I've turned it off, and we're just working on the bottom layer now. And let's like super quickly do some color correcty things. And we're going to color correct for the building. We're not even going to worry about the sky anymore, because that's our other layer that we'll work from. So we're just going to color correct for the building. I want the building to be like crazy awesome exposed. I want the building to have a lot of contrast. Let's see. I want the building's blacks to like really hit black. There we go. Now we're seeing the data. There we go. Yeah. Black. I want to calm the highlights down a little bit on the building. I just really want it to look like super metallic. There we go. Super metallic. So I'm messing with the shadows right now. And then, yeah. So I want that. And now that's where I like this clip. Now we're going to mess with our top one. You see everything's reset. And remember, our top one is just the sky. And look, it already like dropped back down. You see that? Because I just turned it on. So here's what it was off. Our sky was blown out because we were color correcting for the building only, right? Now we turn it back on. We've gotten some of our data back. Now, to be fair, I did not shoot this well. So we will only be able to get but so much information back from our sky. Actually, we're getting quite a bit of information back. Okay, cool, cool, cool. To be fair, though, again, I did not shoot this as well as I should have, probably. So, but now we're more or less able to retain some of that information. Again, this is super like rough and ready example, but now if we kind of like, ooh, and then if we do that, and you would think that's how I shot that, but it's not how I shot that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Anika. I see Sean has a question. In Premiere, when you use the eyedropper for white balance, do you pick pure white or 18% gray? That's a good question, because here's the thing, Sean, I don't know. When I'm doing stuff and I do actually have a color picker available where I have white, the 18% gray, and black, I've tried it both ways, and I find that both ways tend to work for me either way. So I'll pick white and yeah, it'll more or less balance out and I'll be like, okay, cool. I've also done the 18% gray and that's worked too. So I don't know if there's like a clear consensus on like which one, like textbook with Premiere Pro, you're supposed to use for the eyedropper. For those of y'all who don't know what Sean's talking about, when you come in here, if you are going to color correct by using the eyedropper, and so he's talking about the temperature and the tint, all of this over here, right? Which I haven't been messing with for the most part because everything from this vlog was just like shot outside. So I have everything balanced to daylight because we're just always outside. Even though it was cloudy, with this I probably should have used like cloudy day or something, but I didn't. Anyway, what you would do usually is you would take this eyedropper here and try to put it on whatever in the screen is at 18% gray or pure white, as close to white as you could possibly get. Or you can do something like, well, I can't leave the screen, but usually I have a little color swatch that I kind of bring with me for professional shoots, not for vlogging because it kind of gets in the way. But for professional shoots, yeah, I'll have someone hold that up to the screen and then pick color from there. It's a good way to help color correct my footage. So yeah, that's what Sean's talking about. But I don't know, man. Good question. All right, any other questions in the chat? I'm loving these questions. Keep them coming, man. If you have stuff, I'm more than happy to break away from what I have planned today. And where are we at? Ooh, we're at the 33. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Now, what else did I want to show y'all today in regards to color? Now, okay, let's start to get into color grading. I want to show y'all a couple of different color grading options that I really like in Premiere that I feel like people like don't take full advantage of. So remember, as we talked at the top of the class, color correction is all about trying to get things to look as natural as possible. So everything we just did, manipulating this clip to do the masking and this and that, that could still technically be considered color correction. Like you are correcting how something was shot because I didn't shoot it with exposed correctly for, you know, the sky and the building, which would be hard. So like we're fixing that in post. We're still technically color correcting. Now we want to color grade. We want to start to add a style on top of the footage, right? And there's a few things within Premiere Pro that I think are worth noting that are really cool to do that with. So one of them being using adjustment layers. So generally by the time you get to color grading, adding a style to your footage, you probably more or less want that style for the whole video, right? And if it's a vlog like this vlog is almost 10 minutes, 11 minutes, almost 11 minutes, you know, to try to add the grade on each individual clip is cumbersome. So I have in my standard project, I always have a adjustment layer available in the right size that I want. If you've never created an adjustment layer, what they are is essentially like a blank clip. There's no data on it, and whatever you put on top of it affects everything that's below it. And if you've never made one before, the way to do that is to come down here to the bottom, hit the little paper icon for new item, and then go to adjustment layer. And usually what it'll do is whatever timeline is active, if you hit make adjustment layer, it will make that adjustment layer be the settings of the active timeline. So again, this is a 4K video, so it's giving me the width and height of that 4K video, time base, and square pixels, because that's how I shoot. So I would hit OK, and then boom, it now has created that new adjustment layer in my project. I already have one in here, so I'm just going to delete that, but I wanted to make sure y'all know that's how you do it. All right, so we're going to add our 4K adjustment layer to our video 8 track. All right, and then we're going to stretch it all the way out to cover everything that this vlog entails. I think this is like text on screen up here, if memory serves me correctly. Ooh, look how badly I shot this. I should show you how to do that later. Anyway, we're going to pretend we didn't see any of that stuff. All right, so now with our 4K adjustment layer selected, right, we're going to play around with this tab of the Lumetri color. We're going to play around with the creative tab. Okay, we're going to open it up and we're going to look at all the different looks that we can play around with here. And I want to say I showed y'all a couple of my favorites before, but I want to like reiterate some of my favorites. So a few of my favorites in here, and you should really just go through this and just like check them out. You know what I mean? They do so many different things. A lot of them are going to look very extreme. A lot of them are going to look very extreme, but you can mess with them. You can keep tweaking to your heart's desire. All right. So one of my favorites is this one, Gold Rush HDR, which is basically Premiere's version of like teal and orange. So if I hit it, boom, we get this crazy like teal and orange look, which I would say this is like a bit too stylized for a vlog. But what I usually like to do is I like to mess with the intensity, which is right here. I like to mess with the intensity and bring it down to like 30-ish%. And I just really like how that ends up bringing out, again, the greens and blues, but not muting my skin tone too much, because it still has those hints of orange built into it. So I'm going to turn it off so you can see where we started. Here's where we started. Here's what the creative look adds to it. So that one is like one of my favorites. Another one I really enjoy using is Clean Fuji. I want to say it's Clean Fuji B. And for those of y'all who are old school, you know that Fuji film usually did lean more towards that like greenish blue kind of hue in general. So again, now this one I actually like. Ooh, I actually like this a little better for this video, because wow, that really brings out the green of all the plants, which I feel like the theme for this entire vlog has been like how beautiful the greenery is in Mexico City, even during the dry season. So yeah, man. But play around with these, check them out. There's just so much you can do in here. And you can do things like add a little bit of faded film to the look. So like I'm like fading it right now. I mean, I don't hate that. It just gives like a fun little different kind of je ne sais quoi. You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't know what, if you will, that I think are really helpful. Now, how much time do we have left? Ooh, okay, we're at the 40. So we've got like 15, 16 minutes left. A few things I want to call to your attention now as we color graded crickets. Oh, do you want me to color grade the crickets? Is that what's happening now? I can do that if y'all want. It's not a problem. Let's see. Where are the crickets? Indeed. let's see, where are the crickets in here? Oh, here they are. That was easy. Found them. It's almost like I edited this video and I know where things are in it. How crazy. All right. So here are our crickets. Let's color grade them. Let's turn off our creative color look right now. Oh, wow. I actually shot this very balanced. I'm proud of myself. Okay. So we have our crickets here. Nice. And you can see I would consider this shot to be shot quite well. Oh, I'm not. Oh, crickets. Y'all are doing crickets like, oh, cricket is quiet. My bad. Oh, I'm here already, so I'm going to do it. So, all right. So as you can see, I feel like I shot this relatively well, actually, because we have a lot of data and information not really hitting 0 and not really hitting 100. So I actually did this pretty well. I want to see what Auto does with this, actually, since we're here. Yeah, it kind of dropped it down a little bit. For whatever reason, it feels like it wants to give the blacks a lot of love, which I disagree. So I'm gonna pull those up a little bit. And then I'm gonna mess with I'm gonna bring some of the lights back in. And I'm gonna bring some of the contrast back in because I actually really like contrast in my footage. I know some people don't, but I tend to like it. All right, so there we go. I like that. Now let's turn on our video layer and boom, that's where we landed with crickets. And I know that was neither here nor there and nobody wanted it, but I wanted it. So, okay, now I want to talk a little bit about some things to keep in mind, especially if you are a Premiere Pro user and you're on a Mac. So you have probably noticed that when you export from Premiere Pro on a Mac, you've probably noticed that sometimes, in fact, probably all the time, your footage looks a little desaturated and not quite looking exactly how you color corrected and color graded it in Premiere Pro. And we can get like super into the nitty gritty of it, but we don't have the time to do that. But the reason why that is because Premiere Pro uses a different not Premiere Pro, Macs use a different gamma than like everyone else. And so because of that, when you export, it doesn't quite look the way you spent the time making it. And so to combat that, one of the senior product managers with Premiere Pro created a LUT. And I'm going to show you that LUT now. It is here. I have it available in Creative Cloud. This is like where it actually lives in Creative Cloud. And I'm going to throw up a QR code on the screen for you so you can see it. And I'll just leave that QR code up in the corner for a second so that way you can come back and rewatch this, throw your phone up to get to it, and have the link available to you. But this gamma compensation cube, that's what it's called, will help if you're a Mac user and you're noticing that when you spend all that time color correcting and color grading your footage and you export, it doesn't quite look the way you want. So I think we have enough time where I can show you what I mean. I think we have enough time to do that before our live officially ends today. So we're going to go ahead and, even though I missed the joke, we're going to use the cricket shot because it's nice and short, which is what we want. Oh, Anika threw it in the chat. Shout out to Anika. That's what's good. Thank you. All right, so we're going to use our cricket shot here. It is color corrected, color graded. We like the way that looks, right? It's a vibe, you know what I'm saying? Bugs. Command M, Control M. We're going to export it out. And we're going to call this something else. Never mind the freeze frame there. Just ignore that. And we're going to call this Bugs No Gamma. And we're just going to throw this on our desktop real quick. Cool. And I already have it checked because I have done this before. But you see how everything just got lightened up a little bit. All right. So we're going to call this Bugs No Gamma. So that way we know where we're starting from. And then we're going to just hit export. We're going to actually just export straight from Premiere for this one, just so we can get the point across here. Oh, Whoops, the doodle. Didn't see the zoom bar up there. Come here. I said come here. Hide. Go away. All right, so I believe it has exported. I'm going to move some windows around so I can find where this guy is. There it is. All right, bugs, no gamma. So we see what we have here, right? I'm going to bring my shot in that I just exported so you can see where we landed with the export, and we can decide if it looks similar. It does not. All right, so you see now what we thought we exported versus what we actually see. I wonder if you can, yeah, I'm looking at the live feed. You can see it in the live feed. All right, so this is what we're about to correct with the Francis LUT, what I call the Francis LUT, because it was created by Francis Crossman, who we appreciate. If you ever run into him on the lives or anything, tell him thank you. All right. But you see now where we thought we were versus what ended up getting exported. Super annoying. So now we are going to hit Command M, Control M again. And this is usually my last step when I am exporting a video to make sure that it ends up looking the way I want it to look. So we're going to call this one now bugs with gamma. Okay. And then we're going to come into effects, Lumetri look LUT, and you see it already applied it because I use it every single time, but I'll go ahead and like go through the motions of finding it. So you'll go to select, and I actually keep the Francis LUT in my Creative Cloud folder. And I keep it under, see, I go here so often, I don't even think about it. Templates, LUTs, there we go. I keep it in there, where I have a whole bunch of other different LUTs I've bought and messed with, and, you know, Rec 709 things. But here it is, QT Gamma Compensation Hue. I'm going to hit open to add it now to my footage. And hopefully you'll notice that when you add it to something, when I take it away, you see how it lightens it up a lot. So you remember, it's going to overcompensate in Premiere Pro. So it'll look super duper saturated on your end in Premiere Pro. But when you export, hopefully you'll get a little bit closer to what you truly intended. So let's try this now with our Gamma Compensation Cube LUT added. And where's this going? To the desktop, bugs with gamma, cool. Just like double checking everything. Okay, hit export. It's gonna shoot it out hopefully relatively quickly. Cool. Let's see where we landed now. Oh yeah, way closer to what we originally intended. And then here is no gamma as well for y'all to see. So no gamma with gamma original. Again, nothing's foolproof, but it gets you a lot closer. And this is my final step for exporting on literally every video I work on, whether it's for a client or my channel, everything. So I saw that Anika threw the link in the chat, but one more time, just so y'all know about it, just gonna throw this QR code up one more time. We're getting towards the end of our live, but yes, I see Alejandra is asking, would that work if you send it to export in Media Encoder? Yes, it would. It would still work. Same steps, except this time when you do it. So I'm going to hop back into Premiere. All right, so we have it here. We're ready. Command M, Control M to bring up our export window. And you see it's already added there. So everything you do here, all these changes you make, whether you hit export straight from Premiere down at the bottom, or you hit send to Media Encoder, all of that stuff, all that information of how you do it gets sent to Encoder too. So yeah, it would still work over there. And even if you put it in your encoder queue and you decide to go back in and switch some things, everything you see here available to you in your export window in Premiere is also available to you in Encoder to make any other shifts and changes you want to make as well. So great question, Alejandra. Thank you. All right. So let's see, was there anything else I wanted to talk to y'all about with color? I showed you the color workspace. I showed you, what else did I show you? I showed you the color workspace. I showed you auto color, gave you like a super basic rundown of how to understand your Lumetri scopes. I also gave you a little bit of tidbit about how to color correct for skin tones, or just like bring out the vibrancy, the beauty of all skin tones using myself. What else? I showed you how to mask and kind of like mess with color in 2 different clips if you need to kind of balance things out. The other thing I wanted to show you as well, and then we'll kind of wrap up and talk about what we're going to go over tomorrow with the last live of the day, is I also wanted to show you, if you do eventually want to get insider baseball on all things color, there's actually a really great article done in the Adobe support community, and I will throw this link QR code as well, where they actually really do go very in depth about why things are the way they are with Premiere Pro in regards to color. Remember, Premiere Pro is an editing software that is generally not only for us content creators, but also for big budget films and movies, which have to make sure that they have their color set to broadcast standards. And so that's why Premiere Pro has so many tools and tricks built into it for interpreting color, because they're trying to make sure that they can hit us sort of prosumer, consumer level folks, and then also hit the Hollywood folks, Tom Bien. So yeah, if you want to get super insider baseball, check out this article. It's really well written. It really like shows the gamma differences and other settings you can do, actually, which I didn't show y'all, but other settings you can do within Premiere Pro and the general preferences to make sure that it's showing up the way you want. So yeah, super helpful article. All right, I see someone asking something. Let me see if I can answer it quite quickly. Oliver. The video will now look too dark everywhere but QuickTime Player. No, actually, no, that's the crazy thing. So no, you will do that and then upload to YouTube and it'll look the way you want it to look. It is just the struggle of us, Mac users out here living our lives inside an ecosystem that works well, but refuses to let others in to finagle with things. But yeah, no, it should still work even through that, Oliver. Good question. Is Media Encoder faster than Premiere Pro export? Depends on what you're doing, So, and this is a question from Muhammad. So it depends on what you're doing. I like to use Media Encoder for something like this. So this vlog is 11 minutes long, something like that. And in order for this to export, I would need to, set my in and out, all that, and let it run through. And it's going to take a while. And then I can't really do anything else with my computer because Premiere Pro is like hogging everything. So sending it to encoder, I find, tends to be better because then I can keep editing other things in the background while encoder is working. It's kind of like Premiere Pro is an editing software and an exporting software second. Encoder is just an exporting software. Like that is what it's for. And so it knows how to, it's not being bogged down doing other things like rendering previews and things like that. Is just exporting the video. So that's the difference. I also like to use encoder when I know I'm going to batch export things. Again, like we did yesterday, I created like 3 or 4 different shorts. I could have also thrown the vlog in there as well. Export all that stuff in encoder while I'm starting to work on something else, organizing footage, doing things like that. So yeah, I don't think you need to use encoder every time. Like if I'm making a single short in Premiere, yeah, I'll just export it real quick. It's going to take like a minute, but when I'm trying to like build and keep things moving along, that is when encoder truly shines. Ooh, we're at the 54. Lord. Okay. How the issue you mentioned. Okay. Cool. Y'all are having chats down there. Fun. So tomorrow, what we're finna do is we're actually I'm going to make up a couple of, not make up, I know what the tips are, but I'm going to instruct y'all on a few tips for creating content that I think will be helpful. I am also going to really try tonight to make y'all my like shortcut sheet, my favorite shortcuts in Premiere Pro that I've mentioned throughout the lives that we've had this week that I think just really help speed things up in Premiere Pro and help you edit faster, which is the name of the game. So my goal today is to have that PDF made for you so that way then you can have it tomorrow. Hopefully that's how that goes. Fingers crossed. Hold me to it. And then we'll also just do like a really simple review of everything we've covered this week, because I feel like it's been a lot. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like it's been a lot. So with all that being said, thank you so much for popping in on this live. It has been delightful hanging out with y'all so far. We have one more. You're stuck with me one more day, and then we're out. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.